So do I regret moving to Poland? That's a question I've asked myself. And I think the answer is no. I might have done it a little differently, but I think it's been an awesome, awesome choice that I made. But it's not without its drawbacks. Just for some context, back in 2013, so 12 years ago, I made the choice to move to Poland. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area on the peninsula. And but my family, my parents, my grandparents are all Polish. So I traveled to Poland as a child and lived here for a year and a half in the early 90s. And 12 years ago decided that I wanted to move. I'd spent 6 months in Poland a few years earlier, and I decided that it was the right choice for me. So would I regret anything about the way I did it? I might have stayed working for another year. I was working for at Stanford University at the Hoover Institution, so I really liked that. But it was time to move on. Part of that tied to my decision to get a doctorate in history, which I was planning to do in Poland no matter what. But it made sense just to move, not to try to do it in a distance way. So 2014 is when I physically moved. I left the job and started everything fresh here. I haven't been living in Poland continuously since then. I was pretty much for about 4 years, and then for family reasons I had to come back to California for several years. But I've maintained a residence here. I have a freelancing business here for teaching and translating, and I've established myself here, paying taxes and residency and everything. So what has it given me? I'd say the number one thing is at least a partial answer to the question, who am I? Where do I come from? And when I was growing up, I always felt this sense of my identity not being clear. And with age, I realized that the main reason that is because I was raised with a strong sense of my Polish heritage and culture and traditions in America. So being here in Poland now has also given me the priceless information about how I am mentally and in other aspects compared to other Polish people who are born and raised in Poland. So definitely there is a difference. It's hard to characterize in one way or describe in one phrase, but I think that I'm, of course, genetically Polish, and there's a lot of things tied to that as far as, who I am and how I look and behavior, maybe temperament. But mentally and attitude-wise, I'm definitely more American. So part of that is language. I speak English fluently as a native speaker. In Polish, my Polish is quite good. It's quite good. I probably don't give myself enough credit, but it's not like a native speaker would speak who was born and raised here. So, and I don't think it'll ever quite be, which is fine, because the way I speak ties to my personality and who I am. So if I was born and raised in Poland and spoke in Polish, I would also think more in Polish. And specifically as a Polish person, heavily influenced by the communist period and all the restrictions on personal freedom and growth and knowledge and learning and travel and all those things that we take for granted in places like America, where in Poland it was not until 1989 where things started to loosen up, and it hasn't. I'd say it's even surpassed America in a number of ways, but that hasn't happened until the last decade or so. So it's different. Somebody who went to school here, I lived here for a year and a half as a kid in the early 90s. So I went to third grade, half of fourth grade, and I got a feel for how it was, but that's different than, if you go K through 12 here in Poland. So another reason beyond the confidence that this whole experience has given me and better understanding of myself, another reason that I found this really valuable is that I can compare and contrast between Warsaw, Poland. That's where I'm mostly based. I've been around Poland, but Warsaw is what I know best, the capital city, the center of politics and the economy in Poland and history, recent modern history especially as well. the seat of the government and all that. And the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically the peninsula, so you could say Silicon Valley, Stanford, Palo Alto, and that whole area. I'm from Redwood City, so just a few miles north of there. And I can see the pluses and minuses of both places. I come to appreciate what's taken for granted in the Silicon Valley as far as the access to various resources and education, and of course the ability to have a job. Very expensive place, but also very dynamic place. And I learned a lot there. I met a lot of very interesting people there, a lot of famous people, Silicon Valley and whatnot. But in Poland, I've come to appreciate the more free-thinking, actually, attitude. I think freedom of speech is much more respected here in Poland, even if you have political disagreements, whereas in the US and the California Bay Area specifically, people are afraid to say certain things because they fear how it might affect them socially, the way you're labeled on social media, how it could affect your employment, your job. So I think in Poland, in that respect, it is better. The weather, the climate, you can't beat it. Climate best by government test, Redwood City, California. It's temperate, Mediterranean style climate. It's sunny most days of the year. In Poland, I don't think it's even averages, maybe 100 days maximum in the sunniest places in Poland. Here we have the sun poking through the trees. So it's, and this is already practically winter, so mid-November. Sunset is about 4 p.m., maybe even before 4 p.m. by now. It's pretty low in the sky already, and it's just about 2 p.m. So there's no comparison. It's 53 degrees right now, which is the warmest it's going to be this week. It's going to drop to about 42 and then 39 during the day in 2 days. So much colder than now. This is about as nice as it gets for November, I think. So I'm enjoying the sun and the relative, not warmth, but not cold while it lasts. So in that respect, the weather is better. On the other hand, you also get a feel here for the seasons, the changing of the seasons. You can see the winter, you can see the summer, the spring. So there is more of that clear transition between the various seasons. And now actually I felt a drop of rain on my head. So it could rain today, it could rain practically every day in Poland. As far as comparing and contrasting the Bay Area and Warsaw, Poland, it's much cheaper here. Of course, if you live here and work here, you need to have an income to match the expenses. But in general, the Silicon Valley and especially places like Palo Alto are among the most expensive places in the world for what you get. $1 million for a house easily, whereas in Poland, it depends, of course, where you live, but you can get a house for maybe $100,000, depending on the type of house and the location and all of that, and not several states away from the Bay Area in my case, but an hour or two away from the center of life here in Poland, as far as the big cities basically are the center of economic life and cultural life and social life. I don't regret the choice to move to Poland, but I do think about how things might have been different. Maybe I was in a bit of a rush to move when I did, and there are some downsides, which I'll focus on in another video, but just in summary, you could say I wasn't working full-time for the last 12 years. I've done all kinds of things. I've done the teaching and the translating and other jobs here and there, but if I had worked full-time in one place and kept putting away money for retirement, then it would have been a different situation for me financially. But of course, financial reasons aren't the only thing to consider. So that's a small part of my story, and like I said in the beginning, I don't regret moving to Poland. I might have done it a bit differently, but it's been the biggest growth experience of my life by far. So the last 12 years have been, it's better than any university degree or amount of money, maybe not any amount of money, but if the difference between having all this experience the last 12 years and a couple $100,000 more in my bank account, if I had just stayed in one place and worked and saved and all this, I wouldn't trade it, because it was at a period of my life where I needed a new challenge, I needed to grow, and I was able to do that. I just got my new ID. It's been 10 years since I got my first ID, or 11 years, I believe, almost. So it's also a period for me to reflect of how much I've done in this amount of time, how I've grown as a man, and how I've become somebody who is much more able to adapt to shifting and changing situations, which we're definitely facing in the world today. But I'll tell you some more about my other experiences and reflections living in Warsaw some other time. So for now, we're just signing off. We're in this nice park in the middle, or just south of the middle of the city. And they're doing some renovation work, but it's a pretty quiet place to record. So they got this historic water temple. This used to be a place where you could come and get water from one of the wells, one of the city wells. It doesn't seem to be active anymore, but fortunately they preserved the structure and renovated it, and they're doing some other renovations here. This is Nick, signing off from Warsaw, Poland.